Hello everybody and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. For today's video, we're going to be talking about the ETF, whether it gets approved, whether it doesn't, what it means for the price both in the short term and the long term. I am expecting that this is going to have a significant impact on price, and we're going to be breaking down exactly what it means and how to be positioned for it to make the most profit for our personal selves long term. We're also going to be talking a little bit about the idea of a super cycle. Could this truly be the super cycle where Bitcoin goes mainstream, institutions flock in at the same time, paired with retail investors in one glorious blow off top? We're going to talk about it. We're going to break it down so that we can look to make the most profit possible in this coming cycle. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And with that being said, let's jump right into this amazing video today. So as we're starting today's video, the popular saying comes into my head: buy the rumor, sell the news. As you guys can see, Bitcoin has been absolutely on a tear as we're rocketing towards our resistance up at about $48,500. Over the last month, Bitcoin has had a massive breakout, and it's all been rallying around the rumor of the coming ETF. Are we going to get approved? Is it going to get denied? What's going to happen? And so far, every single month, we just end up seeing that deadline get pushed back another month. They're just kind of kicking the rock down the road, so to speak. And so the coming ETF deadline is said to be about the 1st of January. So I don't know when it's going to get approved or not. The reason we're talking about this is once again because of the saying, buy the rumor, sell the news. We have seen the price of Bitcoin breaking out and rallying over the rumor of the ETF. Are we going to get approved? Are we not going to get approved? All of that fun stuff. That is what has really produced and driven the breakout of this run for Bitcoin. So when I'm looking at this, I honestly don't think that it matters what the news is. I don't think that it matters whether it gets approved or whether it gets denied. I think that it's going to sell off the price of Bitcoin. When we're looking at Bitcoin, ever since it broke out of 25K right here, we had the target of 48,500. I've continued to stick to that. Nothing in the plan has changed. The only difference was we just spent 200 days consolidating on that level as new support. Now that we're finally at this point of getting that run to our level, I'm looking at this as take profit level. In the same way I was looking at it all the way down in here, it just took a lot of time to get here. I'm still looking at this as producing some type of a pullback inside of the market. So we're not trying to get over invested right now as the market's first breaking out. Now, yes, I know if the ETF gets approved, but Donovan, that's a huge thing. That's the most bullish thing for Bitcoin ever. It will never sell off. Look what happened to gold when its ETF got approved. And yes, you would be right. Once the ETF got approved for gold, that was right here, and the price of gold instantly went up like 3x in value. But this is a completely different time in place. Gold had just gone through a 30-year correction. It had just went through this long rounded bottom. We had just broken out and made a higher high at the exact time that the ETF got approved. So that was just all perfectly timed to get this type of a reaction. In the same way that I think that it's ultimately going to be timed for Bitcoin as well. The only difference is this has all been rallying around the ETF. We're at a different time and place. I think that in the short term, the Bitcoin price rejects. If we get approved, I think that it rejects and we start a little bit of a correction back down. If it gets denied, I think it rejects and it starts a little bit of a correction back down. Big picture, it's very, very bullish for Bitcoin, and it will 100% make Bitcoin go mainstream. There's not anything else that really needs to happen for Bitcoin to have 100% regulatory clarity. Once the ETF is in, Bitcoin is here to stay, and in my opinion, it already is. But that's kind of the last thing that we need to see. So looking at Bitcoin, we're looking at the entire rally breaking out because of the rumor of the ETF. So if it gets denied or approved, I still think that we're going to see this sell-off. And when I look at this, it reminds me of 2017. The reason I say that is because the price structure is very much the same type of a setup. There isn't much of a difference. Even the bottom formation of the bear market was pretty much the same. Now, if we notice here, kind of the cycle low that we get this double bottom formation, and it was very similar over here inside of this cycle bottom for Bitcoin. The only difference was we made this lower low right there. And if we're looking at this cycle for Bitcoin, we never made a lower low. The secondary low ended up holding, but it's the same pattern where you have capitulation, rally up, and it's kind of like this double bottom formation. It was the same pattern we made. The only difference was this ended up being more of a Wyckoff, where we got this secondary lower low that acted as a spring. But then out of that bottom, produces the uptrend, right? This was what happened in 2017. Bitcoin maintained higher highs and higher lows all the way back up until it broke those prior all-time highs. When we're looking at the current cycle today for Bitcoin, in my opinion, it really does look pretty similar. We consolidated at the point of us breaking out of this bottom for a long time. I think Bitcoin spent like 200 days inside of this ascending triangle. So just almost exactly 200 days in the ascending triangle. When we're looking at how much time we spent, it was almost 200 days. So the similarities in price are all right there. The price, the time, everything is very much the same. And that's why I continue to think that, once this news of whatever the heck happens with the ETF, I'm honestly thinking that we're going to come back down and retest this trend line in the same way that we kind of did right over in here. If you guys remember, well, most of you probably don't, but I got my first Bitcoin right here at 450 bucks. I took all of my Bitcoin that I made and in profit, and then I longed it right here at the Bitcoin halving, and then I got liquidated right there and lost it all. So in that move, I remember getting super excited because of the news of this freaking halving. I knew it was going to make Bitcoin rocket. So it was buy the rumor, sell the news. The news came out and then the price instantly dumped. I'm thinking that it's going to be similar around this ETF one way or another. And most likely this reverts us back down to this trend line. If we come back down to the trend line, if you notice, we ended up retesting the prior high that we broke from in that move. And then we also came back down and retested that trend line before going back up. We would be doing the same exact thing for a correction here. We'd probably come back down to about $31,500 right at this range high that we just broke from, which would coincide perfectly with this trend line, this ascending support that we've been on, before getting that next leg up. We're looking at near similarities. Even the bottom was the same. This bottom happened at the end of the year. This bottom happened at the end of the year. This cycle top happened at the end of the year. This cycle top happened at the year. This one was exactly a year from cycle high to cycle low. This one was exactly a year from cycle high to cycle low. This one was like 50 days more. But regardless, you guys get the point. It's once again just the same type of cycle that's always been playing out. So more or less, this is along the lines what I'm watching for. We don't want to get too crazy buying a lot of crypto while we're at resistance. This is the time historically when we have seen corrections. I don't think it matters so much around what happens with the ETF. Generally speaking, because Bitcoin's rallied around a rumor, when the news comes out, I think it's going to sell off. Could be wrong, but that's my guess. You guys know we've had the target of 48,500 forever and ever, like the whole majority of this year. So now that we're pretty much at this level, I'm not going to be sitting here telling you that you need to go buy right now, because the time to buy was all the way back down in here. I'm telling you that if you want to buy, there's probably going to be an opportunity to do it, but at the same time, I'm not trying to predict the price so much. If the ETF gets approved and Bitcoin just skyrockets into new all-time highs, I've got my long-term stuff that I'm sitting on that I'm not touching, because I know that I'm not some expert that would 100% have this crystal ball that knows what's going to happen. But I do understand that sometimes fundamental factors can drive price in unique ways. We do know that the price of gold went into a new all-time high after its ETF approval. I think that we're at a little bit of a different moment in time for Bitcoin, but nonetheless, if this were to happen with Bitcoin, you don't want to be too positioned for the potential of this correction versus already having your long-term stuff in play. Like, I've already been accumulating all the way down in here. Me and my group, we've already been accumulating all of our stuff throughout this entire point. Because once the price starts taking off, once we start leaving the accumulation range, it becomes hard to know how much higher we're going to go. Because big breakouts happen. Sometimes the price just starts taking off and catches people by surprise. Do you want to try and predict all of that? Do you want to try and be prepared for every little swing, high and low? Or are you just mainly trying to gather what you're going to for long-term positions and then keep a portion for short-term stuff? If you can't trade, don't keep a short-term position. Just keep everything for the long term. This is what I see in the market. I'm leaning towards a sell-off taking place around the ETF. I am leaning towards us retesting this trend line again, and it's really around the time frames. We don't have a halving until April of 2024, so we're still quite a few months away. Well, 3-4 months away until we're at that halving. And historically speaking, that's still been, a few months even after that before we've actually gone into new all-time highs. And we can look at the prior cycles. We can see that the last cycle, the halving happened there. And it was still a little while before we went into new all-time highs. There was still time, right? Now, if we look at this last cycle in 2016 and 17, our halving happened right here. We had this big sell-off, but then we still had a little bit of time before we went into new all-time highs, right? The cycle over here, the first time we ever had a halving, it was here, and then we instantly went into one. But that was when we had small market caps. So I don't think it's going to play out like the first cycle. I think it would be a little bit more related to either this one or even in the last cycle. What we know is that if Bitcoin is going to end up coming back down and retesting this trend line, that would put us right around potentially the halving for our bottom and pivot point back up, or sometime mid next year for us to start trending back up into that prior all-time high level. That's kind of what I'm going to be leaning towards moving forward with Bitcoin. I just think that we're too early in this cycle to see Bitcoin going into a new all-time high so fast. I think it's a lot more likely we would run up to this resistance, the ETF news, whatever happens, sees the market sell off, people are selling the news, and then when the market comes back to retest this trend line, setting us up for that next move actually into new all-time highs, coming at probably mid 2024, probably closer towards the end of 2024, beginning of 2025. That's my plan moving forward. Now, if we're going to see a super cycle, I think that it's all going to be around the ETF. The ETF is going to be the thing that produces the super cycle, but I don't think that we're getting that super cycle until quite a few months in time. We still have a little bit left to go before we're really going to be expecting new all-time highs. But when the new all-time highs come, expect this cycle to be the biggest one of all. If we're going to see institutions all bottlenecking at the exact same time to accumulate what are already scarce assets, what are already limited supplies of deflationary tokens as a whole, you got to expect that there is going to be an obscene amount of money to be made by anybody that's early to these things. DeFi as a whole is worth $60 billion in total market cap. Like, if all of the institutional money, not even all of it, if 10% of the institutional money in the world came into crypto, you'd already be looking at these things being valued at significantly higher levels than today. So if we're going to see an ETF, it's going to end up driving what, in my opinion, will be the institutional cycle, the real, bubble type cycle, the internet bubble, I guess you could say, is the only comparison. And it's all going to be around the ETF. So I do think that the short term, if it does get approved sometime, beginning of next month, I do believe that the short term will probably sell off, but big picture, that's going to be the most bullish thing for the coming super cycle that we could ever hope, because that will be the thing that makes Bitcoin go mainstream. So anyways, this is the video I had for you. If you guys did find value in it, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these updates. If you guys want to see how I'm investing my money over this cycle, I have a VIP group inside of my Discord server. I post every single thing that I'm doing with my portfolio, trades, NFTs, any sort of just things I'm finding out, people are telling me information. I just share anything in there. So if you guys do want to get access to that, it's a lifetime membership, just one-time fee. So once you're in, you're always going to be in, regardless if we're in a bear market of crypto and I start investing into the stock market. There's a lot of opportunities outside of the market for crypto. And so I just think that it's an opportunity for anybody, regardless of where you're at, to kind of look for a long-term position and to be able to kind of see where I'm positioning myself in that long term. Anyways, I appreciate you guys. I love you guys. And I'm looking forward to seeing this cycle take off. Regardless of the coming news, just be aware volatility is expected. Thank you all so much. And with that being said, I'll catch you in the next one. As always, peace out.